Hello, Facebook Live or YouTube, however you're watching this today. It is Friday, October 20th, and it is National Champagne Day. According to the committee, the French Champagne Committee, of course, everybody's National Champagne Day seems to be New Year's Eve, but according to the French today, it is. And I want to talk about some champagne, or what champagne actually is, because there's a lot of real champagne out there, and there's a lot of stuff that people call champagne that's not champagne. All right. First of all, champagne is from a specific region. It's from a designated region in France, specifically Champagne. That's the name of the region. There is approximately 84,000 acres growing in Champagne. There's about 70,000 different growers in that region. So when you go to the store, of course, we see all the big labels like Veuve Clicquot, Taittinger, Moët Chandon's Dom Perignon. There's only about maybe 10 big brands that occupy the shelves, maybe 5. But between those 70,000 growers, see, here's the one thing that most of the big brands don't do. Most of the big brands don't grow their own grapes. They buy the grapes from small farmers across this region of 84,000 acres in 3 small spots. In fact, Champagne grows more potatoes and more beets than they grow Champagne grapes, or grapes for Champagne. There's 7 grapes that are allowed in Champagne. The first 3 are the most common. Chardonnay, which can make a Blanc de Blanc, a Chardonnay and 100% Chardonnay Champagne. You can use Chardonnay, you can use Pinot Meunier, and Pinot Noir. Those are the most 3 common grapes. They also use Pinot Blanc, and Pinot Gris, and there's 2 others that I don't quite know the names of. In fact, the last one, number 7, which is the smallest, there's only like 4 acres growing in all of the 84,000 acres of Champagne. So for you to get any of those minor grapes is very, very, very highly unlikable. In fact, those grapes, that last grape, which I can't remember the name, if there's 5 wines, 5 champagnes that are made from that grape or blended in there, that's it, folks. But when you go to the store, it's either Pinot Noir, Pinot Meunier, or Chardonnay. The rosé version is made from Pinot Noir with the skin contact. So that is the red grape, and it's making champagne. It can also make white champagne, but Blanc de Blanc, meaning white of white, is made from 100% Chardonnay, which is a very sought-out champagne. People particularly like that. So there's 4,000 different labels of champagne. There's 4,000 houses making champagne. Typically, the big guys don't grow their own grapes. They buy the grapes, then they bring them to their winery, and they make the champagne, which is really sparkling wine, folks. Champagne is sparkling wine. But the allure about champagne is that they're making the bubbles in this bottle from inside the bottle. There's 3 ways to make sparkling wine. You can do the method champenoise, which is bottle fermented, where they put the yeast and everything in here and the sugars, and it gets fermented in here. And there's a way of disgorgement where they take these in the last few weeks of aging these champagnes, and they keep them like this, and they turn them a quarter turn every day or so. And then the neck of the wine becomes all the lees, which is all the dead yeast, all the settlement. They freeze this, they pop it, out shoots the dead lees, they top it off with wine and put the cork back on it, and it goes for sale. Now, most champagne by law, I believe, there's so many laws about this, I might misquote, but I think it has to be 15 months old. But most houses do more than 15 months. If it's a vintage year, which means the best of the best in 3 or 4 years, then they age them for 3 years or more. And it's not uncommon to actually bottle age champagne for 3 to 10 years before the vineyard actually releases it. So there's 3 ways to make it. Get the yeast in here and make it in here. Then there's another method which is done where they make it in vats. Okay, now, incidentally, the only other region, there's 2 other regions, South Africa, I believe, and Cava, which is from Spain, where they actually bottle ferment inside here, which is the most expensive way to do it. Then the second way, the next least expensive way, the second most expensive way, is in huge stainless steel vats where they introduce the bubbles, the yeast, to actually have the fermentation in there, and then they bottle it. That is called the Cremant method. Charmant, I'm not actually 100% sure, but it is a different method. Then the last method is basically what Coke, Pepsi, and seltzer companies do, where they actually put the stuff as it's getting filled into the vessel, the bottle, it's basically pumped with CO2. Just like as a soda gun is, you have the soda syrup mixed with water and it goes through the piping, the hoses, and then it meets CO2, which is a gas, and gets sparkling. That's the last way, and folks, that is dirt cheap to do it that way. So Champagne is by far the most expensive wine region in the world. It costs $1 million per acre in Champagne. That is part of the reason why Champagne is more expensive. The other reason is because it's aged for so long, 15 months or more, 3 years, 5 years, even in 10 years is the case. To prune the vines, some say you need a degree just to be able to prune the vines, that everything is so highly skilled. Now, Champagne, it's aged in these limestone caves that go through Reims and Epernay, or Reims is pronounced Reims in French. And underneath these cities, especially Reims, they're saying there could be 1 billion bottles at any single time underneath the cities, aging in these limestone caves that go through miles and miles and miles of underneath these cities. Now, if it's done out in the countryside, of course, it's in that vineyard's home cellar, which is down still in the limestone. So the limestone is a crucial part of the terroir in Champagne. They get 200 days of rain a year, which means they need soil that can actually get rid of the water and drop it, or they need soil that can actually hold the water, which it does. So the limestones, which are all deposited crustaceans, because that was underwater once, plays that crucial role in basically managing the water content of the soil so the vines can thrive, so the grapes can thrive. So when you go to the store and you look for Champagne, you're going to see a lot of different things across the shelves. Our beloved Prosecco is one of them that you're going to see. You're going to see Cava, and you're going to see all kinds of things that say Champagne that are not Champagne. They are marketed with the word Champagne on it. So if you go to the store, you're going to see Corbel, or Great Western Champagnes in New York, or Andre Cook's. You're going to see all these different labels that say American Champagne or Method Champenoise. Even Dr. Frank's says Method Champenoise on it. And some of these vineyards are going to tell you in America that they have special permission from the Champagne Association to use their names. I've done some research. Some of them say, and I've had some of these vineyards tell me, oh, we have permission. Not that I know does anybody really have permission to do it. The problem is, in America, we don't protect other people's origins of foods and drinks. That's why we can have, I did a video on Parmesan. You can make Parmesan from any milk you want, and you can forego the whole 2,000-year tradition from Parma, Parmesan Reggiano cheese. You can forego the whole 2,000-year-old tradition and standards that they have very, very strict in Italy, and make whatever kind you want to here and make it a hard grating cheese and call it Parmesan and get away with it. Same thing with Champagne. So you have all of these inexpensive Champagne producers. Champagne, sparkling wine is really what they are. This is Champagne sparkling wine, but it's from Champagne. So you have all these sparkling wine producers in the US, the cheap ones, that are calling themselves Champagne. And Corbel is up there at the top, and some of these are not cheap. So you have to keep in mind, when you go to the store, you go to a restaurant, and you're going, or I gotta tell you, if you're a bride and you're booking a wedding and they're selling you a champagne toast, chances are you're not getting a champagne toast. You're getting a cheap sparkling wine toast. We sell our weddings as a Cava toast or a Prosecco toast. Because really, that's what the bride can now pick what they want, Cava or Prosecco. Or if you want to splurge for the champagne, which is 5 to 10 times the price, we have no problem with that. But there is a massive price difference, because the work that goes into here, the aging process, the $1 million an acre for land, the whole process is very, very expensive. You can have an American winery that does none of that, uses any grapes they want, uses any pruning techniques they want, buy grapes from anywhere, not use any of the methods, and still slap that Champagne label on that for $7, $8 retail. The grapes that go into here, into a true Champagne, cost more than $7 or $8 per bottle before the labor and the aging. So there's a major discrepancy in what Champagne really is and what a lot of the majority of Americans think champagne is. And it's really not our fault. It's the fault of the big companies that are out there, these vineyards that are making massive quantities of these and telling us for years we have champagne. Now, if you've noticed, some of the best sparkling wine producers in the country do not label their products champagne. So you have Gruet from New Mexico, which I absolutely love and fell in love with it in Colorado. They call their stuff sparkling wine. You have a lot of French houses out of California, like Mum Napa. You have the Rodier estate out there, which are all French, by the way, and they have now vineyards here in New York and the U.S. and they're making wines in California. None of them refer to their stuff as champagne. They refer to it as sparkling wine. So there's a direct correlation, typically a direct correlation, with the quality of the quote-unquote American sparkling wine. The lower the quality, these companies typically call it champagne to boost the price and boost the sales, when in actuality it's not. The guys that are doing it right, and maybe you can do method champenoise, the bottle fermentation, anywhere in the world that you would like to, but you just can't call it method champenoise because it's much more. It's the pruning, it's the aging, it's the limestone, it's the terroir, it's everything. It's a tradition that goes into making a true champagne, and America has none of that. So the people that are doing at least the bottle fermentation, the more expensive bottle fermentation, we do it here in Ulster County in the Hudson Valley. Wycliffe makes a great bottle fermented sparkling wine. It's fantastic. Michael and Yancey do a great job with that right here, right across the mountain. So for National Champagne Day, don't get duped. If you are going to have champagne today, ask for the real thing. There is a place for the other stuff, but I got to tell you, if you're going to buy from a company that is going to ride the coattails of a French traditions that's 500 years old and call their product champagne, for me, I don't want to support a company like that. I'd rather go buy an American producer that's calling their product sparkling wine, indeed what it is. If you go to Corbel's website, you can see a bunch of different things that they offer. A lot of these so-called champagne producers in America that say they're doing method champenoise aren't even using the correct grape varietals. Corbel does Riesling. Corbel even does a red one from Merlot. So there's all these different varietals that are not even permitted in Champagne, in the Champagne region of France. You can typically tell by the bubbles if it's bottle fermented, small, fine, tiny bubbles. I once heard that there's about 1 million bubbles per glass of champagne. If you pour it and let it sit there and bubble away, you'd get an insane amount of bubbles going off of that. And you can tell with this CO2, with the pumped sparkling wines where they actually put gas into it at the end, you can tell those are big bubbles. If you poured a glass of ginger ale next to a glass of champagne, you could actually see the size difference in bubbles. It would be a major difference. Big bubbles versus nice, tiny, finesse bubbles. The bubbles usually start at one point on the glass, and that point on the glass is where the bubbles keep streaming up. So you have multiple streams in that glass of champagne where they're coming from one point, so it's just streams of it coming up, as opposed to a glass of 7-Up or Coke or Pepsi, where the bubbles are just all over it, constantly in it. So National Champagne Day, I know what I'm drinking later. I'm going to definitely have some champagne today to celebrate National Champagne Day. And of course, there is a time and place for American sparkling wine. I would forego the quote-unquote people that are riding the coattails because I don't think they deserve the business. They need to really step up and say exactly what they are. But again, American law just does not protect a lot of designated area foods and wines from across the world, like port can only come from Portugal, from the Douro Valley. Sherry can only come from Spain. And there's a lot of things that can only come from certain areas. In other countries, they're not allowed to do that. In fact, just as late of 2010, 2011, 2012, Australia had to stop making port because they were making a port-style wine, putting port on the labels, and they were no longer allowed to do that. Here in America, you're still allowed to do all of that, unless you're new, unless 5 years, if you want to do it in the last 5 years and you want to start up, you're not allowed to put port or sherry. But if you did it before that, you're grandfathered in. So if you had champagne on your label before, I think it was 2012, and it is in the recent few years, you're grandfathered in and you can keep slapping champagne across it. You can keep slapping port across it. You can put port on a bottle of California wine that has no grapes that they would use in port. They probably use 100 different grapes in port wine. In fact, they do use about 100 different grapes. The only one that we would recognize as wine drinkers would be Tempranillo, which is from the Rioja. Rioja made Tempranillo famous, or Tempranillo made Rioja famous, which is a region in Spain. That's the only grape that you would even recognize in port. And because they're allowed to do 100 different varietals, they're only using a handful in each one, 5, 6, 7 maybe. Grams makes a 7 grapes port, which are using 7 different grape varietals in it, thus the name 7 grapes, Grams 7 grapes. So port is another fascinating beverage and tradition. Really, I guess we'll look when National Port Day is and do a video on port. And maybe if there's not a National Port Day, maybe we'll do a port promotion at Aroma Time. And really interesting ports as well. So hope that helped you with champagne, and go pick up a bottle of the real champagne for a celebration or for National Champagne Day, the 20th, Friday the 20th of October 2017. I'm not sure if that changes every year. You'll have to go to the French Champagne Committee website and check that out. I'm Chef Marcus Guiliano. Thanks for watching. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up, share it. If you think somebody can benefit or be of value and learn something, please share it, pass it along. And when you come into Aroma Time, say hello.